Yes, there were ET game cartridges buried by Atari in 1983, but when a team dug up a portion of that landfill in 2014, they found a lot more than just ET games. In fact, out of all the games dug up, ET only accounted for 10% of them. Today I'm going to show you the remains of some of those other games and discuss why they ended up in the landfill alongside ET. Why am I doing this video? Because the whole story of ET being a bad game and being buried and causing a video game crash is one of the most exaggerated stories within the retro community. I declared long ago that pretty much the whole story is a piece of garbage. The visual evidence I'm about to show you will hopefully bring more clarity to what actually happened. We have a lot of photographs of the 2014 landfill excavation because it was a big event. It was part of the documentary called Atari Game Over. People on the scene of that documentary were taking a lot of pictures. We also have pictures of some of the excavated items from eBay because the city where the dump was located auctioned off some of the remains. And then some of the people who won those auctions went on to auction them off again. Let's start off by looking at those eBay photos. We'll start with some berserk. Now you may ask, how do we know this is from the actual landfill? Because the auction came with a certificate from the city. It has signatures from the mayor and the programmer of ET, Howard Scott Warshaw, and the person who organized the dig. There's a serial number and a seal, and there's also a serial number plate. Moving along, we have Warlords. It looks like it's been through a really rough time under the ground. Now, so far, I have shown you two very high caliber games, both of which were featured in my top 10 Atari 2600 games of all time video. However, the story people have been saying about ET over the years is that it was such a bad game that a lot of people returned it, or they just never bought it, and Atari made too many of them. So Atari had a surplus and they had to bury them. But why are there good games laying with the so-called bad game, ET? Were people returning the good games? It must be that there's more to this burial than is commonly understood, which I'll get to in a second. Let's take a look at some others. We have Vanguard, Centipede, Air-Sea Battle, Asteroids. Those four are also considered good games. So yeah, things are getting pretty crazy, right? You got all these good games and you have ET laying together in a landfill. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what's going on here after you hit the like button. Thank you. Let's take a look at what got released in the very first year the 2600 came out, which is 1977. You can see that there aren't that many releases and they all came out around the same time. It's organized by month. Now watch as I go year by year after that. 1978, 1979, 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983. Did you notice the tremendous glut of games in 82 and 83? And just for comparison, I'll quickly go through the remaining years of the 2600. So as you can see, the video game market overexpanded in 1982 and 83, and this led to too many titles on the shelves within stores. To make matters worse, consumers were buying fewer games overall around 1982 and 1983. To make matters even more worse, Atari at the time was forcing stores to place large orders way ahead of time. So the stores ended up having too much stuff. The only choice was to either mark it down or return the orders to the manufacturers. Atari wasn't the only one that made all those games, but it was one of the bigger manufacturers. They accepted the returns from the stores and they stored them in various warehouses. Also, if a customer returned a game to a store, that would also end up in Atari's warehouse as well. At some point, Atari decided to dispose of the items within those warehouses, and they did it by taking them to various landfills, including the one that was featured in the documentary. Here's some more of those items, which are part of an exhibit. We have Sword Quest Earthworld and Centipede, and you can see that they have pricing stickers. So those followed the path from Atari to the store and back to Atari. It's not unclear if a customer had ever had them, but it's possible. This dump wasn't limited to the 2600. We also have the 5200 version of Space Invaders. Let's take a look at some of the dig site photos and see if we can spot some other games that I haven't mentioned so far. So here I can spot Superman and Defender. I believe this is Circus Atari. And here we have Yar's Revenge, and we have Star Raiders. Here we have Breakout, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I believe this is Haunted House, Phoenix, Pele's Soccer, Kicks for the 5200, Real Sports Football, Maze Craze, and Sword Quest Fire World. So as you can see, this burial involved a variety of games, both good and bad. That's the overall point I want to make today. Yes, they didn't excavate the entire landfill, so maybe if they kept digging, they would find ET in higher concentrations within the other areas of the dump. But for now, we should put aside those fantasies people have of dump trucks full of ET games being hauled to the dump. It likely did not happen that way. But what did happen is that there was another video where I debunked a lot of the claims made against ET. So I suggest you watch that one if you haven't already. Have a great day, everybody.